Well, I just want to say that this Mehul Choksi matter is an interesting one. I mean, I've made some comments before last week, but it's more information has come to light, so it actually shows a lot. Now, the first thing is that there's good relations between the people of the Caribbean and the Indian subcontinent, period, whether India, Pakistan, and all those places. Why? Because we have a shared history. We were both colonized by the same English, in some cases brutalized and victimized, and people from that tradition and that history should make sure that they never get into a position where they themselves support any kind of brutality of anyone, whether or not people are accused of anything. Now, I would first say that this is an indie-dumb, it's not an indie, but an anti-dumb indie fiasco from start to finish. I hope that this case will expose and show us and demonstrate to us all of the abuse that the average person who are arrested in Dominica will face, not just in Dominica but most of the Caribbean. Also, the inconsistencies in the application of the law, the manner in which the boats came into the area, all of those things we should discuss and be clear. For example, you're arrested in Dominica on a charge, or even Antigua is even worse. The conditions of Antigua's prisons is terrible, absolutely terrible. The same here. You're arrested on a charge. You are not guilty of anything. You're arrested on a suspicion. Yet you sit in a concrete cell, and if the toilet in that cell, in one joint cell, is not working, then you have that smell for the whole time that you're there. Remember, you're innocent. And some people, because the toilet's not working, will use areas in the cells, in the corners, to defecate, urinate, on any other things they wish to expel from their body. They'll do it right there in the cell. So, a gentleman is picked up, he's arrested, charged, brought to, and held in the cell until brought to the magistrate's court. They can hold you for 73 hours in Dominica, 72 hours in Dominica, constitutionally mentioned, except all of the police normally abuse that. It is during a murder trial, eventually that was clarified that within the 72 hours you must be brought before a judge. In this case, a boat arrives in our water, and I say that boat has been in Dominican waters for at least 2 days before officially it is recognized as being here. 2, it is clear that the boat did not give advance warning, which is 24 hours, to customs before they arrive in our waters. That did not happen. Now, in the case of a Dominican doing that, or any other national doing that, that person's vessel is detained, the pilot is charged for illegal entry into the territory. In this case, we understand that a police officer meets the boat that the individual is in, almost introduces himself. In other words, the person would almost assume, well, my God, I'm being invited into Dominica, yet they charge him for illegal entry. The captain of the ship is not arrested. Then a plane arrives here some few days later. The pilots are on tour. They don't even go to quarantine, they're on tour. 2 of the alleged people who had kidnapped and beat Mr. Choksi in Antigua are actually sitting in Fort Young Hotel as tourists, did not go through any quarantine. So clearly there must be some political directives in this thing. It's not a legal issue at all, it's a political issue. And if you then present a gentleman who's running a tour operation who had been instructed to clear the ship, he admits that he was called well after the ship was here to clear the ship. So there was no instructions and there was no information to customs. Police officers, we are told, at sea. That is nonsense. In Dominica's laws, police have no business on the water. They only are on the water if invited or instructed by customs. In fact, if there's a ship being pursued by our customs officials and a police officer happens to be on the ship with customs staff, he must be given specific instructions to fire onto the ship or to take any action, because he has no authority within the precinct, not just in the water up to 12 miles, which is our national maritime right, but also the precinct of where the location is. For example, we have one in Ansde Bay, which is a small little area here for the boats normally. We have none in Marigot. We have one in Portsmouth, and we have one in Roseau. So even in the precinct, the police have no authority. So how in the world does a police officer go to a vessel? How does that happen? I mean, this is a political thing. Now, secondly, if you as, and remember, we are part of the Commonwealth, for God's sakes. We're part of the Commonwealth. If anyone comes to our country in distress, we are obliged by international obligations to assist them. So how do we charge this man for illegal entry when we are obliged to assist him? Because in the manner in which he comes here, we can see that he's bruised up. You can see that he's had some trauma. You don't offer him any medical assistance. You bring him to headquarters and you have him in a room somewhere. And what the hell is that? That is not law. And remember, a criminal can do whatever they want until they meet the law. Yeah? The rules of the law will tell them what they can and cannot do, so they can be arrested. But the police officers must follow the law. There's two things we need to look at here in this case. You could be rendered to the American law anyhow. You could beat, arrest, kidnap, and bring someone to American court. The judge will never ask, how did you bring him here? How did he get here? In the English system under which we operate as part of the Commonwealth, we have to explain ourselves. The police officers have to be clear. Okay? First of, where does the abuse come from? If he's abused by Indian and he alleged some Antiguan police officers, then that means he should not be sent to Antigua. I wouldn't be safe going to Antigua in those circumstances if in fact that is what the allege is, if we do a proper investigation. Two, the charge of illegal entry is a foolishness. It is damn foolishness. He didn't enter here no illegally, or you should have brought the captain and the entire crew. The gentleman comes and he explains, for example, in part of the deception that's going on with the public, is that, oh, he was told to clear the ship. And in the issue of clearing the ship, he gives the name of the crew. Yet it is the officer who approached one of those crew who tells him, the man you're looking for is in the hall. No, when you ask him, he said, oh, there was no other person in the ship when we cleared the ship. It was just the names. And I suggested last week in my interview that, why don't we ask him, did he check if there was anybody in the hall? Was there anybody else on the ship? Now they're saying, oh, it might have been two ships. Whatever it was, it seems to me that this charge is a nonsense. And you should never, the judge should never have allowed them to read no charge to him. We are obliged to give him assistance because of the manner in which he comes to our shores. Okay, so I think that charge should be thrown out. And I don't agree with the legal position of the lawyers in Dominica representing him completely, nor the ones in Antigua who are instructing. I've heard some clear lights of reason from some of the lawyers that he has in India. I can see some clear understanding of that. But I think that what they should do initially is move on the issue of abuse of process. In the English court, you cannot bring an accused to court having beaten him, having kidnapped him. That means the abuse of process during the investigation stage, that means that case is thrown out. A test case is a very simple one, where a murder inquiry was taking place in England, and the prison authorities, working with the prosecution, forced the lawyer to meet his client in a particular area of the prison after they had put listening devices and videos, and they interfered with the fundamental principle whereby an accused have a confidential relationship and discussion with his lawyer. That's all they breached. The contents of that discussion would not even help the defense, would not even help the prosecution. Still, the judges throughout the cases, case went all the way up through the system in England. That means that the threshold is very low. Now you beat, you kidnap, the man have all kinds of injuries, you don't bring him to the doctor. Then, secondly now, you force the charge to be read in the magistrate's court, but this is the other foolishness of it. In our system, the magistrate convicts you, then the prosecution asks permission to have you deported. And that deportation is done by our president. So I find it very, very strange and convenient for them to obviously read this bogus, ridiculous, stupid, idiotic fiasco charge against the gentleman about entering our jurisdiction illegally. Yet, at the same time, the matter is at the High Court. That's just absurd. It makes it look pretty stupid. I think that this matter should not be dealt with any of the people here in our jurisdiction. All of these poor developing countries are just too politicized. From where you buy your toilet paper to where you eat, where you buy your, every blasted thing is politicized. And that is a problem. So what we should do is, what his lawyers should do is file an abuse of process application, have this a permanent stay of proceedings, and we now, as a country, should give him the benefit and the assistance because of the manner in which he comes here. And whatever he has done it becomes irrelevant because of the treatment he has received from the so-called law authority. India has no business asking for him to be deported onto their territory because of the manner in which they have conducted themselves. And the absurdity of using English nationals, 4 of them, who have come here. And the mystery woman who set the honey trap, that woman had come several times to Antigua in pursuance of this, of the kidnapping and beating of this gentleman. And why is it that India would go to such length? Why would they do that? Because of the ease to get somebody coming from England to land in Antigua, 1 flight, 7 hours, and they're in the country. This kind of absurdity and the politics of it, it destroys the relationship that Indians have with people in the Caribbean because of the cricket. We watch CPL cricket more than any other thing that the Americans produce. That is our mainstay, our main entertainment. So we have an affinity with Indian people. I have several Indian people living here that I'm good friends with. You understand? Indians, Pakistanis, you name it. They are good friends of us. When our governments behave this way, we need to separate the politics and declare it to be stupid foolishness. We shouldn't sit down there and have this intellectual nonsense and try to legitimize the nonsense that's taking place. He has no right to be in the system. It's absurd at all, even in the magistrate's court, for them to ask, which is a very, very thing that I've never seen used before in this place, where you ask that he be produced every 3 days from the hospital. What? They're afraid he's going to escape? How is he going to escape? There's so many police officers outside the hospital. If he is ill, can we just leave him in the hospital? I have never seen any hospital person be taken and brought to court every 3 days. I mean, come on. Why should we sit there and accept that? It's a shame. It's an embarrassment. As a Dominican and a person who operates in the region, I think it is terrible for us to see that, and some of us are staying silent. It is a complete nonsense. That's what it is. He should be, and he will be allowed to be free. And I hope the judges get it right. But I think the Chief Justice, at the first instance, should ensure that somebody from outside the region, not Antigua, where the courts or St. Lucia are based, but somebody from outside the region within the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court should come and listen to this matter here. Not even the magistrate from Dominica should listen to this. So appoint people to come and deal with this matter from outside of this jurisdiction. The politics is deafening. It's deafening, and it's sinking this matter into a bloody fiasco.